In the name of Allah, most compassionate, most merciful. Dear students, dear viewers, here again I am with another element of fiction, namely point of view. It is important to consider in the analysis of a literary work point of view because it is also helpful in getting the meaning of the writer he would like to convey. So, what do we mean by point of view? Simply, it is the voice who is telling the story to the reader. In any literary work, there is a narrator, distinct from the author or the writer. Most of the times, the writer sets a voice to present the story, and this voice is called the narrator. He is the person, or we can say better, it is the voice which presents the story to the reader. To make it clear, if we analyze, we look through the different types of point of view, we will understand better the significance of point of view. The first type of point of view is called the first person narrator. It is when the writer presents, or the narrator, yes, presents the story using the voice I. It means the pronoun I or me, or if there are many voices, many people, many narrators speaking, telling the story, then we read we. So it is a story told by the protagonist himself or a character who is close to the protagonist and or other characters. He uses, of course, the pronouns I and me. In this way, the readers experience the story through this person's eyes and only knows what he and she knows and feels. It means through this I, me, a reader, as a reader, I feel I identify with this voice I, as if I am reading my story. I feel what this I feels, what this I think, or I understand, or I think how he thinks, how he sees things in the story. I can see with him only when he is in a particular place. So I do not know what's happening in another place, another room, or another city. Everything is limited to this person speaking I. And of course, it has got a function. When I read the story, in which there is this I voice narrator, then the writer wants me to experience what his protagonist is experiencing. The good example of this first person narrator is, of course, there are many works, but I can illustrate with one of the works of Edgar Allan Poe, his poem, The Raven. Okay? So, when we read The Raven, okay, it's a long and beautiful poem. It is about a narrator, a voice. You see this I, so I have highlighted it in color red to distinguish it from the other linguistic elements, to show that this is the writer here is using the first person narrator. In general, it's a long poem. I cannot read it all, but I can say that it is about a narrator, someone. He is speaking about himself, sitting or in his room, in his chamber, alone. It was night, on December, and he was trying to sleep. Then he was disturbed by an imaginary knocking on the window of his chamber, and he saw a raven, and he thought that this raven is talking to him. So the story with this first person narrator is that, or this narrator is that, he is in a mournful state. He is in deep sorrow and in deep melancholy for the loss of his beloved Leonore. So this poem, the writer or the poet Edgar Allan Poe has used the first person narrator in order, I think, let's read examples and then we see the function of this first person narrator. So Of course, I'm not going to read it all because it is very long, but just some stanzas, the beginning and here, for example. It says, once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over merry, a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. Some visitor, I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. As I distinctly remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore. Lenore is his beloved, of course, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here for everyone, evermore. Okay, so if I look at the second stanza, it really the writer describes his melancholic feeling, and he's trying his best to how to say to eradicate or to at least to forget the try to forget the sorrow he is experiencing due to the loss of his beloved. So you see the highlighted in blue. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore. So he was reading books. He was trying to read in order to try to forget the pain, but it was in vain. Then he goes into an imaginary communication with himself, okay, thinking that the raven is talking to him about Lenore. Uh, then, of course, at the beginning, he saw when he heard knocking on the tapping on his chamber window. He looked and he found nothing. Okay, deep into that darkness, peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the widespread word, Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, Lenore, merely this and nothing more. So he was checked outside his chamber and he found nothing. So he called for Lenore, and there was the echo of this name, Lenore. That's only and nothing more. Then he says, I have highlighted the next stanza, back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. You see, his soul is burning, too much grief, strong grief. So the best way of transferring this grief to the narrator, to show him how much he is grieving, it's the best way by using the first person narrator. It's a long, beautiful poem, right? So this is the function of the first person narrator. It is to make the reader identify with the character, with the main character who is speaking this I. Feel with him what he is feeling. So let's imagine if Edgar Allan Poe wrote or writes this poem in the third person narrator. It means he uses he. Then the meaning and the effect is going to be different. If we read here in this stanza, back into, look at this stanza, this highlighted green line, back into the chamber, turning, all my soul within him burning. See, within him burning. So here, me as a reader, I am at a distance from the narrator, who is talking about someone else. Then the feeling and the experience, of course, as a reader, and the effect, its effect on me, of course, is going to be different. Here I feel I am distanced from the feelings of this melancholic character. The second type of point of view is what we call the second person narrator. It is a story told by a narrator who addresses the reader or some other assumed you. Speaker uses pronouns you, yours, and yours. Your and yours. For example, you wake up to discover that you have been granted all of worldly possessions, right? So, this point of view inserts the reader directly in the story and allows him a space for personal contemplation. The point with this second person narrator is that it is rarely used in literature, but it really engages the reader when it is used. The effect is to engage the reader directly to the story and make him reflect with the events of the story and participate with his thoughts and feelings. The last type or the third type is called the third person narrator. Here it is a kind of story that is told by a narrator who uses all of the action, who sees all of the actions. Speaker uses the pronouns he, she, it, they, his, hers, its, and theirs. So also this person may be a character in the story. It means someone who is in the story and speaking about all the speaking about all these characters, right? And this type of narrator tells me everything about all the characters, their actions, their thoughts, their feelings, uh, everything. It moves from one character to another character. So I know everything. It goes everywhere, from one city to another city, to from one place to another place. It is, in other words, called the all-knowing narrator, right? And this type, third-person narrator, also it has got some types or some sub-categories. The first one is called the limited, and it is the probably the easiest one, where the author writes in third person. It means he or she or they, but keeps his focus only on the thoughts and feelings, limited to one central character. Means he is going to elaborate, to develop the main central character, entering into his thoughts and feelings, in contrast to the other characters. This is why it is called the limited. All information is limited only to one central character. As opposed to limited, there is this omniscient, as I said before. So this omniscient, it has got another name called godlike, sorry, where the narrator knows and sees everything and can move from one character's mind to another. This is what I was talking about. I was talking about the omniscient character, right? So authors can be omniscient narrators by moving from character to character, event to event, and introducing information at their discretion. There are two main types of omniscient third person narrators. So here, as I said, so it is the all-knowing. As a reader, I am capable of entering into the thoughts and feelings of all the character. I have information about all the people in the story. A very good example of omniscient narrator, this is just an illustration. One of the story of Nathaniel Hawthorne, which is called The Birthmark. It is a short story. I'm going to read the summary. It is about a scientist called Aylmer, who is skilled scientist, poses his experiments to marry Georgiana, and this Georgiana is a beautiful woman in the town. A beautiful woman with a small hand-shaped birthmark on her left cheek, her only physical flaw. So she is very beautiful, but only one physical flaw. While her previous admirers paid no attention to the mark, Aylmer grows obsessed with it, spoiling their happiness. Troubled by her husband's disgust, Georgiana urges him to remove the mark. Aylmer agrees, blending his passion for science with his love for Georgiana. Aylmer takes Georgiana to his laboratory, where his assistant Aminadab, so third character, a strong and rugged man, helps with physical tasks. Aminadab, Aminadab comments that he wouldn't remove the birthmark if it were up to him. Georgina admires the enchanting beauty of the room Aylmer prepared for her. So, as she explores Aylmer's library, she discovers his past experiments and recognizes his failures, which only increases her admiration for his ambitious efforts. In the lab, Aylmer demonstrates a potion that revives a sick plant and gives the liquid to Georgiana. She drinks it and falls asleep, while Aylmer watches over her lovingly as the birthmark fades. So it at the beginning this experiment and this potion he gave to his wife succeeded. Yes, he was able to remove the birthmark, but it was at the expense of the life of his wife. Aylmer rejoices. However, Georgiana awakens and compassionately tells Aylmer that she is dying. Despite the successful removal of the birthmark, Georgiana's life ends as Aminadab laughs in the background. So, this is just a summary, and I would like to demonstrate. Here is the third person omniscient. What we mean by omniscient, as I said, the all knowing. It gives me information about all characters, their thoughts, actions, and feelings. So, I have highlighted in green just some examples where the third person omniscient narrator shows off. Look here, for example, in this slide, the first one line, Aylmer grows obsessed with it. So this is the state of mind of Aylmer concerning the birthmark in the face on the face of his wife. Then, if we read, troubled by her husband's disgust, Georgiana urges him to remove the mark. So she starts to feel embarrassed, annoyed each time by the remarks of her husband, the way how he looks at her. So she feels troubled. So here we have information about the feelings of Georgiana. Next, Aylmer agrees, blending his passion for science with his love for Georgiana. So here we have got information about Aylmer and about his future action, that he is going to do the experiment to remove this birthmark. Also, we can here sort also about the third character, Aminadab, comments that he wouldn't remove the birthmark if it were up to him. So when Aminadab saw the beauty of Georgiana, and just with this small birthmark on her right cheek, he commented with himself that if it was up to him, he would not remove this birthmark. So here we have got the state of mind or the opinion of Aminadab. So we have that we enter into the mind of Aminadab. Here also the last sentence, for example here in the last sentence about Georgiana when she is in the laboratory of her husband, as she explores Aylmer's library, she discovers his past experiments and recognizes his failures, which only increases her admiration for his ambitious efforts. So here we have got her feelings towards her husband, her admiration for his ambitious efforts. Another depiction here, last slide. So she drinks it and falls asleep while Aylmer watches over her lovingly. So here there is a description of Aylmer watching his wife after drinking this potion lovingly. It means with love. So here we have emotions. Next, as the birthmark fades, Aylmer rejoices. So here we have got also feelings of Aylmer. However, Georgiana awakens and compassionately tells Aylmer that she is dying. Here we have feelings compassionately. She is with compassion. Yeah, she still keeps compassionate toward her husband, even though he was the cause of her death. Of course, the story is about the obsession with perfection in human nature, which is something difficult to reach. This is, of course, the main theme of this story. So here the writer has used the third person omniscient narrator. I know, of course, this is just a summary and this is just to illustrate how it works in any in literary work, so how we can depict it. And here we can, so it has got a function, of course. It helps in the writer to get his message through, right? The writer wants the reader to know everything about all his characters because his theme goes in this way. So if we imagine, for example, if the story of the birthmark is written using the first person narrator, then the effect is going to be different. Imagine that it is written, for example, through the voice of Aylmer. That means it is Aylmer who is telling the story. Scientist telling about his obsession with his scientific experiments, with his life in the laboratory, etc., his researches, then how he met this beautiful woman, his feelings towards his woman, then everything, we are going to see everything through the eyes of Aylmer. Then maybe in this way we might sympathize with him, maybe, though he was the cause of the death of his wife. But using the first person narrator always makes the reader identify with this first person narrator. So I think this is why Nathaniel Hawthorne did not use the first person narrator in this story. Next type of third person narrator is the one which is, say, objective. Here the narrator is neutral. He just describes or talks about characters without getting into their heads, right? Just general descriptions, general observations. I do not get into their heads or into their feelings. Objectives. It's like stating facts about characters and events. So what now we have to consider in the analysis of point of view is that when the writer chooses a particular point of view, he aims to make the reader focus on a particular perspective in the story in order to get his message through. And yes, so if I use the first person narrator, my focus is going to be focused with this I narrator. I don't go elsewhere. Then I will identify with this I. And we have seen with Nathaniel Hawthorne, the focus is on three characters because the message is about the imperfection or the obsession with the imperfection or with perfection in human nature. So the best way to convey this message is the third person omniscient narrator. Thus, point of view, we can say, contributes in conveying the message of the writer. So my point is that we should not take point of view for granted. It is very helpful in the analysis of the writer's message. So finally, how do you write about point of view? There are important points we have to consider in writing my essay or paragraph about the point of view. Of course, the first thing I do is that I identify what type of point of view is in this story. Is it the first person narrator, the third person narrator? Is it limited? Is it objective? Is it omniscient, etc.? Then you must illustrate from the text, as I highlighted in the story of Nathaniel Hawthorne. These are kind of illustrations from the text that you should bring and quote and put them in your essay or in your paragraph to illustrate this type of point of view. Then the most important thing now, you have to tell us what is the function of this point of view in the narrative. What is the role, what meaning, what perspective the writer wants me to focus on. And then you can discuss the following point is, what if the writer uses another point of view? What will be its function on the story? As I gave you an example earlier about Nathaniel Hawthorne, it is written in third person omniscient narrator. If it is written in the first person narrator, then maybe the effect is going to be totally different than it it will not work with the message of the writer he would like to convey. And of course, the last thing, as I said, of course, so it is like a circle here. You have to relate, of course, the point of view to the theme of the story. This is very important. Always we have to look for the connection of the use of this such type of point of view with the theme the writer would like to convey through his story. So that's all for about point of view. I hope everything is clear. Kindly, if you have any questions about point of view or about any element of fiction or about literature in general, I will be happy to answer your questions. That just write your questions in the comments below. And also, if you have got some how to say it, some issues with literature, concerning literature writing or interpreting or literary devices, etc., do not hesitate to write in the comments below, and I will be happy to assist you in your literature journey. Finally, I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you will subscribe to my channel and like and share it so that it would reach a larger audience, and this will help my channel to grow. So thank you for the moment. See you in another video. Goodbye.